October 2023, El Paso, Texas. The sun hangs low over Fort Bliss National Cemetery, casting long shadows across rows of white marble headstones that stretch toward the horizon like soldiers standing at eternal attention. Each stone marks a promise kept, a duty fulfilled, a life given in service to something greater than self. Today, one more soldier comes home. Captain James Brennan stands before a flag-draped coffin, his weathered hands clasped in front of him, his shoulders squared despite the weight of 68 years pressing down upon them. The uniform he wears fits differently now than it did in 1904. The shoulders are broader with age. The chest carries ribbons earned across 2 wars. But the insignia remains the same. Armor Branch, Tank Commander. The honor guard fires 3 volleys. The sound echoes across the cemetery, sharp and final. Brennan does not flinch. He has heard that sound too many times before. 7 men in uniform fold the flag with practiced precision, each crease deliberate, each movement honoring centuries of tradition. When they finish, the triangle of stars rests in the hands of a young sergeant who cannot be older than 22. The same age Brennan was when he first climbed into a Sherman tank and learned what it meant to be responsible for the lives of 4 other men. The sergeant approaches a woman in the front row. She is 90 years old, her face lined with the geography of a long life, her eyes still bright with tears that never seem to run dry. Maria Martinez, the widow. On behalf of a grateful nation, the sergeant says, and the words are as old as Arlington, as necessary as breath. She takes the flag, holds it against her chest, and Brennan sees what he has seen too many times at too many funerals. The moment when a piece of cloth becomes the last tangible connection to someone who will never walk through a door again, never laugh at a joke again, never grow old beside you again. The ceremony ends. People begin to disperse, moving toward their cars with the uncomfortable shuffle of those who have fulfilled an obligation and now seek escape from proximity to death. But Brennan remains. He walks to the coffin, places one hand on the polished wood. "Goodbye, Doc," he whispers. Robert Martinez, Corporal, Gunner, 3rd Armored Division, 97 years old when his heart finally surrendered to time what German steel could never claim. For 79 years, he carried the weight of August 12, 1944. For 79 years, he blamed himself for surviving when another man died. Maria Martinez approaches, moving slowly with the aid of a cane. She reaches into her black purse and withdraws an envelope. The paper is yellowed with age, the edges worn soft from handling. "He wanted you to have this," she says. "He wrote it 3 weeks ago, made me promise not to give it to you until after." Brennan takes the envelope. His name is written across the front in shaking letters. Doc's handwriting, once steady enough to load armor-piercing rounds, while a tank bucked and rolled across French countryside, now reduced to the trembling script of a man whose body had finally betrayed the warrior spirit within. "Did you read it?" Brennan asks. Maria shakes her head. "He said it was between the 2 of you, tank crew business." She touches his arm, squeezes once, then turns and walks away, leaving Brennan alone with the dead and a letter he fears to open yet cannot ignore. But he does. The letter is short. Doc never was one for unnecessary words. "Jim, if you are reading this, then I am gone and you are still here, and that is how it should be. You were the captain. Captains are supposed to outlive their crews, but I need you to know something before I go. I never blamed you for Tommy, not for 1 second of 1 day in 79 years. You gave the order to bail out because that was the right order. I disobeyed because I could not leave him. You pulled me out because that was your job. None of that was wrong. What was wrong is that we were in a tank that could not protect us. What was wrong is that someone decided a thin box of steel and a gun that could not penetrate German armor was good enough for American boys. I have watched the television. I have seen the documentaries. They call the Sherman a good tank. They say we won because we were better trained and better supplied. Maybe that is true. But I have also watched my grandson play his video games where the Sherman is a joke and 5 of them die to kill 1 German tank. I have read the books that call us victims of incompetent generals who cared more about production numbers than the lives of the men inside those steel coffins. And I do not know anymore, Jim. I do not know if Tommy died because war is hell or because someone in Washington failed us. I need you to find out. Not for me. I will be dead. But for Tommy. Because if we died in death traps, then Tommy deserves to have someone say it out loud. And if we did not, if the Sherman was what it needed to be, then Tommy deserves to have his honor defended. You were always the smart one, Jim. You went to college after the war. You became a teacher. You know how to find the truth, so find it. And when you do, tell the world. For Tommy, always for Tommy, your gunner, your friend, Doc. Brennan reads the letter twice, then a third time. Then he folds it carefully and places it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart, where Doc kept his rosary beads during the war. He looks at the coffin one last time. "I will, Doc," he says to the dead. "I promise." But standing there in the Texas sun, surrounded by the white stones of men who gave everything, James Brennan does not yet know that keeping this promise will cost him more than he imagined. He does not know that in 3 days he will stand before Congress and confess a truth that will threaten to destroy everything he has spent 79 years building. He does not know that the search for truth about the Sherman tank will force him to confront a lie he has been telling himself since August 12, 1944. He does not know that sometimes the past does not stay buried, no matter how many white stones you pile on top of it. The screen fades to black. Then suddenly, violently, an explosion of sound and fury. We are in France, August 1944, and Sherman tank number 3047, known to her crew as Betty, is about to become a coffin. Act 1 Alpha, the summons. 3 days after the funeral, Brennan sits in his study at home in Arlington, Virginia. The room is lined with bookshelves heavy with military history, autobiographies of generals, technical manuals on armored warfare. On one wall hangs a shadow box containing his medals: Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart, campaign ribbons from France, Germany, Korea. 40 years of teaching military history at Virginia Military Institute, condensed into colored cloth and metal. On his desk sits a laptop computer that his son taught him to use 5 years ago. The screen glows with the blue light of modern technology invading a room that otherwise exists in 1945. Brennan is reading, not a book, not a document, the comments section of a YouTube video. The video is titled "Sherman Death Trap, America's WWII Scandal." It has 2.3 million views. It was uploaded 1 week ago. The creator is listed as M. Brennan Productions. M for Michael, his son. Brennan watches the video with the sound muted. He has already watched it 4 times with the sound on. He does not need to hear his son's voice narrating over stock footage of burning Shermans, dramatic music swelling as statistics flash across the screen. 60% burn rate, 5-to-1 kill ratio needed against Panthers, inadequate armor, insufficient gun, death trap. The words are bad enough without sound, but the comments are worse. "My grandfather died in a Sherman at Bastogne. Finally, someone tells the truth about how our boys were sacrificed. This is why I have trust issues with the government. They knew the Shermans sucked and sent men to die anyway. Respect to all the tankers who survived that death trap. True heroes despite incompetent leadership. 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger, absolutely criminal." On and on. Thousands of comments, millions of views. A narrative taking root in the collective consciousness like weeds in a garden. Once established, nearly impossible to remove. His phone rings. The old landline. Brennan still refuses to carry a cell phone. If people need him, they know where he lives. He picks up. "Brennan. Captain Brennan?" A woman's voice. Young, professional. "This is Jennifer Walsh calling from Senator Blackwood's office. The senator would like to speak with you. Can you hold, please?" Brennan does not answer. He is already holding. A click, then a man's voice. Deep, Texan. The kind of voice that commands rooms and wins elections. "Captain Brennan, Richard Blackwood. Thank you for taking my call." "Senator, I will get right to the point, Captain. I am launching a congressional investigation into what I am calling the Sherman scandal, the systematic failure of military leadership to provide adequate equipment to American tank crews during World War II. I have reason to believe this failure resulted in unnecessary casualties, preventable deaths, young men sent into battle in equipment that could not protect them. I want to call you as a witness." Silence on the line. "Captain, are you there?" "I am here, Senator. I am wondering why you think I would participate in this. Because you commanded a Sherman tank for 18 months. Because you lost men under your command. Because you deserve the chance to tell the truth about what happened. The American people deserve to hear from the men who were there." "And what truth is that, Senator?" That the Sherman was a death trap. That better tanks existed and were not deployed. That decisions were made by men who never saw combat that resulted in American casualties. That is the truth, is it not, Captain? Brennan looks at the photograph on his desk. 5 young men standing in front of a Sherman tank somewhere in France. They are smiling. They do not know yet that in 3 weeks one of them will be dead and the other 4 will spend the rest of their lives wondering why they survived. No, Senator, Brennan says quietly. That is not the truth. Then come tell Congress what the truth is. The hearing is in 6 days. I am sending a formal subpoena by courier. It will arrive tomorrow. I hope you will come voluntarily, Captain, but one way or another, you will testify. The line goes dead. Brennan sets the phone down, picks it up again, dials a number he has called perhaps 5 times in the last decade. His son answers on the 3rd ring. Dad, is everything okay? Michael, we need to talk about your video. A pause, then, you saw it. 2.3 million and other people saw it too. When were you going to tell me you were making a documentary calling the tank I commanded a death trap? Dad, it is not personal. It is history. I did research. I talked to historians. The Sherman had serious flaws. The military knew about them. That is just facts. Facts without context are lies, Michael. And you have just told 2.3 million people a lie about men who cannot defend themselves because they are dead. Dad, Michael's voice shifts. Not defensive now. Something else. Careful. Look, I know you have strong feelings about this, but I am trying to build a production company. This video has sponsors. It is getting attention, good attention. This could launch my career. Your career is built on the graves of my crew. That is not fair. Fair? Brennan's voice rises despite himself. Doc Martinez died 3 days ago, Michael. Your video has been up for a week. Did you think about calling me before you uploaded it? Did you think about what it would mean for him to see his service called a mistake in his final days? Silence. Dad, I am sorry about Doc, but he was 92 years old. The video did not kill him. No, but it killed the truth, and now I have to fix that. What does that mean? It means I am going to Washington. It means I am going to testify before Congress. It means I am going to correct the record. Dad, wait. Listen to me. Michael's voice quickens. I am running for state legislature. The primary is in 8 weeks. My opponent is already using military issues against me. If you go to Washington and make this into a thing, if you turn this into some kind of crusade, it will become news, local news, maybe national news, and that will destroy my campaign. Then you should have thought about that before you called my tank a death trap. Dad, please, I am asking you, as your son, do not do this. Brennan closes his eyes, sees Tommy O'Brien's face. 20 years old. Red hair, freckles. A kid from Boston who lied about his age to enlist, who drove a Sherman tank with the skill of a man twice his age, who died screaming for help while Brennan dragged another man to safety. I'm sorry, Michael, Brennan says, but I made a promise to the dead, and that comes before the living. He hangs up. The next morning, a courier arrives with a manila envelope. Inside is a congressional subpoena requiring Captain James Brennan, retired, to appear before the House Armed Services Committee Special Investigative Panel on the Sherman Tank Program. The hearing will begin in 5 days. Topic: Equipment Inadequacy and Command Negligence in World War II Armor Deployment. Also in the envelope, a flash drive containing Senator Blackwood's opening statement for media distribution. Brennan plugs the drive into his laptop, clicks play. Senator Richard Blackwood appears on screen. He is 60 years old. Silver hair, strong jaw. Behind him, the American flag and the Texas state flag. My fellow Americans, Blackwood begins. 79 years ago, the United States military sent thousands of young men into battle against the German Wehrmacht in tanks that could not protect them. The M4 Sherman tank, despite its iconic status in American military history, was outgunned, out-armored, and outmatched by German panzers. Military leadership knew this. They had better options. The M26 Pershing heavy tank existed in prototype form as early as 1943. It could have been deployed. It could have saved lives. But bureaucratic inertia, inter-service rivalry, and the arrogance of men who never faced enemy fire resulted in a decision to mass-produce an inferior weapon. The result was predictable. American tank crews died at rates that would have been preventable with better equipment. This is not speculation. This is documented fact. The Sherman earned nicknames like Ronson because it lit on fire the first time every time. Tommy Cooker, because German gunners knew how easy it was to burn. 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger, because that is what it took to overcome technological inferiority with numerical superiority. We sent our boys to die in steel coffins, and someone needs to answer for that. My grandfather, Lieutenant Samuel Blackwood, died in a Sherman tank at the Battle of the Bulge on December 22, 1944. He was 23 years old. He left behind a wife and an infant son, my father. For 79 years, my family was told he died a hero, and he did. But he also died in a tank that failed him. A tank that did not have to fail him if different decisions had been made. This hearing is not about rewriting history, it is about telling the truth. About honoring the sacrifice of 1,554 American tank crewmen who were killed in action by ensuring that we never repeat the mistakes that cost them their lives. That is what we owe them. That is what we owe all those who serve. The truth. The video ends. Brennan sits in silence for a long moment. Then he opens his closet, pulls out a large cardboard box from the top shelf. The box is labeled in faded marker. Crew Betty, confidential. He has not opened this box in 10 years. Inside are files, documents, after action reports, letters, photographs. The accumulated paper trail of 5 men who shared a steel box across France and Germany from June 1944 to May 1945. And 1 manila envelope, red, sealed with tape that has yellowed with age, written across the front in Brennan's own handwriting from decades ago, do not open until necessary. He stares at the red envelope. Whatever's inside, he sealed it away for a reason. Some truths are too dangerous to examine, some memories too painful to revisit. He sets it aside, begins sorting through the other documents. His phone rings again. The landline. He considers not answering, but old habits die hard. Brennan, Dad? It is Michael again. His voice is different now, tight, controlled. We need to talk, now, in person. I am coming over. Michael, I do not think... Dad, my campaign manager just showed me something. You need to see this before you go to Washington. 30 minutes later, Michael arrives. He is 38 years old, tall, clean cut. He wears a suit even though it is Saturday. He has his father's jaw, but his mother's eyes. Kind eyes. The eyes of a man who has never seen the thing he fears most kill the person standing next to him. He sits down at the kitchen table, opens his laptop, turns it so his father can see the screen. This is my opponent's new campaign ad. It started running this morning. The video plays. Ominous music, black and white footage of Sherman tanks burning. A deep voice narrates. Michael Brennan wants your vote, but can you trust him? His father, James Brennan, commanded Sherman death trap tanks in World War II. Now he is going to Washington to defend the military-industrial complex that put profits over soldiers' lives. Like father, like son, Michael Brennan, wrong values, wrong priorities, wrong for Texas. The ad ends with a photo of Michael and his father at last year's Veterans Day parade. They are making you the issue, Dad. They are saying I am connected to a cover-up of military negligence because you are testifying. Every veteran in my district is going to see this ad. Every military family, and they are going to believe it. Brennan stares at the screen. This is not about you, Michael, but it affects me. Dad, I am 8 points down in the polls. This will destroy me. I am asking you, as your son, do not go to Washington. Write a statement, send a letter, but do not make yourself the face of this. I cannot do that. Why not? Why is this so important that you would sacrifice my future for it? Brennan looks at his son, really looks at him, sees the desperation there, the fear, the need, and realizes that his son does not understand, has never understood, cannot understand because he was not there. Michael, sit down. I am going to tell you a story I have never told you before. Act 1, Bravo, Day 1 testimony. 5 days later, Washington, D.C., the Rayburn House office building. The hearing room is packed. Cameras line the back wall. Reporters fill half the gallery seats. The other half are occupied by veterans, some in wheelchairs, some with oxygen tanks, all wearing pieces of their old uniforms. Caps, pins, patches. The uniform may not fit anymore, but the identity never fades. At the front of the room, elevated on a platform, sit 15 members of Congress. In the center, the chairman, a representative from Ohio with 30 years in the House. To his right, Senator Richard Blackwood, technically from the Senate side, but granted special jurisdiction for this hearing. At a table facing the committee sits Captain James Brennan, retired. He wears his uniform, not the casual service uniform. Full dress, every ribbon, every medal, every mark of service. Next to him sits his lawyer, provided by a veterans advocacy group. Young, competent, unnecessary, Brennan has already made clear he will answer every question truthfully, regardless of legal consequence. The chairman bangs his gavel. This hearing will come to order. We are convened today to investigate allegations of equipment inadequacy and command negligence in the World War II Sherman tank program. Senator Blackwood, you may give your opening statement. Blackwood stands. He does not read from notes. He speaks directly to the cameras. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 79 years ago, American tank crews went to war in the M4 Sherman. History tells us the Sherman won the war. Statistics tell us something different. In the European theater, American tank crews suffered 1,574 killed in action, thousands more wounded, burned, scarred for life. These casualties occurred despite American numerical and logistical superiority, despite air supremacy, despite intelligence advantages. The question this committee must answer is simple. Were these casualties necessary? Or were American lives wasted due to decisions made by commanders who prioritized production speed and bureaucratic convenience over combat effectiveness? We will hear testimony today from Captain James Brennan, who commanded a Sherman tank from D-Day until VE Day. Captain Brennan lost men under his command. He saw firsthand the failures of the Sherman, and I expect he will tell us the truth, even if that truth is painful, even if that truth indicts the very institution he served. Blackwood sits. The chairman nods to Brennan. Captain, please stand and raise your right hand. Brennan stands, raises his hand, takes the oath, sits. Captain Brennan, the chairman says, thank you for your service and for appearing today. I understand you commanded an M4 Sherman tank with 3rd Armored Division. Is that correct? Yes, sir. From June 6, 1944 until May 8, 1945. 11 months. 53 combat missions. And during that time, did you lose any crew members? One, sir, Private Tommy O'Brien, driver, killed in action August 12, 1944. How did Private O'Brien die? Brennan's jaw tightens. He was trapped in the driver's compartment when our tank took 2 hits from a German 88mm gun. The transmission housing collapsed on his leg. He could not escape. The tank burned. Murmurs in the gallery. Cameras flash. I'm sorry for your loss, Captain, the chairman says. Senator Blackwood, you may begin questioning. Blackwood stands, walks around the table, positions himself between Brennan and the cameras. A prosecutor's trick. Make the witness look at you, not the audience. Captain Brennan, you commanded a Sherman tank, yes or no? Yes. The Sherman had nicknames, correct? Most equipment had nicknames, Senator. I'm asking about specific nicknames. Was the Sherman called a Ronson, yes or no? Brennan pauses. This is the first trap. Answer yes. And Blackwood will spend 10 minutes explaining the Ronson lighter slogan. Answer no, and risk looking like he is covering up. That nickname existed, Senator, but not for the reason people think. Please explain. The popular belief is that the Sherman was called a Ronson because of the Ronson lighter slogan. Lights first time, every time. The problem is that slogan was not used until 1954, 9 years after the war ended. Blackwood's eyes narrow. Are you saying the nickname is made up? I am saying the explanation for the nickname is wrong. The Ronson Company did use the phrase, a Ronson lights every time in 1927, but that is not the point, Senator. Then what is the point? The point is that American soldiers did not use Ronson lighters. We used Zippos. Zippos were standard issue. I carried one for the entire war. So did every man in my crew. None of us had ever seen a Ronson lighter until after the war. Brennan reaches into his pocket, pulls out a worn brass Zippo, sets it on the table. This lighter went through 53 missions with me, Senator. It still works. I have never owned a Ronson. Scattered laughter in the gallery. Blackwood's face flushes slightly. Fine. What about Tommy Cooker? Germans called it that, correct? No, Senator, they did not. Excuse me? The German Bundesarchiv, their military archives, has no record of Germans using the term Tommy Cooker or its German equivalent Tommy Bretter. Dr. Jürgen Hartmann spent 2 years searching for it. He found 0 instances in official records, soldier letters, or after-action reports. Then where did the term come from? A British television comedy in the 1970s. Dad's Army. It was fictional, but it got repeated enough that people assumed it was historical. Blackwood picks up a document. I have here a sworn statement from a veteran who says he heard Germans on captured radio transmissions calling the Sherman a Tommy Cooker. What is the veteran's name, Senator? That is confidential. Then I cannot verify his claim, but I can tell you what Germans actually called the Sherman. Brennan produces his own document. This is a captured German intelligence report from September 1944. Translated, it describes the Sherman as, and I quote, reliable, numerous, well-coordinated, difficult to defeat, when in formation. End quote. He slides the document across the table. Germans did not mock the Sherman, Senator. They respected it because they fought against it and learned that American tank crews were better trained, better supported, and more tactically flexible than their own panzer forces. The gallery erupts, veterans applauding, reporters typing frantically. The chairman bangs his gavel. Order! We will have order! Blackwood returns to his seat, shuffles papers, regroups. Captain Brennan, let us talk about equipment decisions. The M26 Pershing tank, are you familiar with it? Yes, Senator. The Pershing had a 90mm gun, superior to the Sherman's 75, correct? Correct. The Pershing had thicker armor, correct? Correct. And the Pershing was available in prototype form in 1943, more than a year before D-Day, correct? Yes, Senator. The T-26E1 prototype was tested in May 1943, so the military had access to a superior tank and chose not to deploy it. That is criminal negligence, is it not? Brennan leans forward. No, Senator. That is due diligence. Explain. Let me show you what happens when you rush a tank into production. Brennan opens his folder, pulls out a photograph, passes it to the nearest congressman, who passes it down the line. That photograph shows destroyed Panther tanks at Kursk, July 1943. The Germans sent 204 Panthers into battle. 6 broke down just getting to the battlefield. Within 1 week, 81 Panthers were in repair shops, not from combat damage, from mechanical failure, transmission failures, engine fires, track failures. The reliability rate was 39%. He pulls out another document. This is the Armored Board Report on the T-26E1 dated December 29, 1944, right in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge, when we desperately needed better tanks. Know what it says? Unsatisfactory, not battle-worthy, transmission failures after 50 miles, turret ring freezes in cold weather, electrical system shorts, final drive fails under sustained operation. Brennan looks directly at Blackwood. Senator, at that very moment, American forces were surrounded at Bastogne. We needed every tank we could get. An armored board still said, do not send the Pershing, not because of politics, not because of bureaucracy, because it would get crews killed when it broke down in front of enemy guns. But surely some Pershings would have been better than none, Blackwood counters. Would they, Senator? Let me tell you what happened when Pershings finally did see combat. Korea, 1950. First month of fighting, 40% of M26 Pershings broke down, not destroyed by enemy fire. Mechanical failure. The Army replaced them with Shermans. The Marines kept their Pershings, not because they were better, but because the Army gave the Marines all the spare parts they did not need anymore. Brennan produces one more document. Maintenance records. M26 Pershing required 1.2 maintenance hours for every operational hour. M4 Sherman required 0.3 hours. War is not won by the tank with the biggest gun, Senator. It is won by the tank that shows up when you need it. The hearing room is silent. Blackwood takes a different approach. Captain, you commanded a 75mm Sherman, correct? Initially, yes. And the 75mm gun could not penetrate the frontal armor of a Panther tank, correct? Long pause. Correct. So you went into battle with a gun that could not defeat the enemy. That is inadequate equipment. Yes or no? Another pause, longer this time. No, Senator. How can you say that? You just admitted. I admitted the 75mm could not penetrate the front of a Panther. I did not say it could not kill a Panther. That makes no sense. Then let me tell you about September 19, 1944. Aricourt, France. German 5th Panzer Army attacks with 113 Panther tanks, the newest, deadliest tanks in the German arsenal. Defending 4th Armored Division under Colonel Abrams, we had 75mm Shermans. Want to know who won, Senator? Blackwood says nothing. American losses, 25 Shermans. German losses, 86 Panthers, 40 Panzer IVs. That is a 5-to-1 kill ratio in our favor, Senator. Not 5 Shermans to kill 1 German tank. One Sherman killing 5 German tanks. The gallery erupts again, veterans on their feet, cheering. The chairman pounds his gavel. Order! Captain Brennan, this committee will have order. But Brennan is not finished. You want to know how we did it, Senator? Tactics, coordination, training. At 0640 hours, my crew was eating cold hash when Panthers crested the ridge. 3 of them, 800 yards out. My gunner said, cannot penetrate the front, Captain. I said then, do not shoot the front. We maneuvered. One Sherman drew fire while 2 others flanked. The 75 millimeter could penetrate 80 millimeters of armor at 500 yards. A Panther's side armor is 40 millimeters. We killed 2 Panthers in under 3 minutes, and the third one retreated. Brennan stands now, points at Blackwood. The 75 millimeter was not inadequate, Senator. Our tactics were superior. Our crews were better trained. Our combined arms doctrine worked. We did not need a bigger gun. We needed to be smarter than the enemy, and we were. The chairman tries to restore order, but the gallery is on its feet now. Veterans saluting, reporters shouting questions. Blackwood, red-faced, yells over the noise. Captain Brennan, this committee will reconvene tomorrow at 0900 hours. You are still under subpoena. Dismissed. The gavel pounds. And Captain James Brennan, for the first time in 79 years, feels like he is back in command of something that matters. The night between testimonies is long. Brennan sits alone in his hotel room at the Marriott on 14th Street. Through the window, Washington, D.C. glows with the lights of monuments built to honor the dead. Lincoln, Jefferson. The names carved in marble. The promises made in stone. We will remember. We will never forget. But memory is not the same as truth. On the bed beside him lies the red envelope, still sealed, still waiting. He has carried it for 30 years, moved it from house to house, packed it carefully in boxes marked fragile, never opened it, never thrown it away. Some documents are too dangerous to read and too important to destroy. His phone rings, the hotel landline. He considers not answering, but discipline wins out. Brennan, Dad. Michael's voice, tight, exhausted. I just got off a conference call with my campaign team. We are down 12 points, 12. The attack ads are working. My opponent is calling me the son of a military cover-up. Veterans groups are pulling their endorsements. Dad, I am going to lose. Brennan closes his eyes. I am sorry, Michael. Sorry? Sorry does not fix this. You stood up there today and made yourself a hero. Made yourself the defender of the Sherman. Made yourself the face of this whole thing, and now I am the collateral damage. I told the truth. Your truth, Dad. Your version. But there are other versions. Other veterans who disagree with you. Other historians who say the Sherman was inadequate. You are not the only one who was there. You are just the loudest. Michael, no, listen. I need you to understand something. When you walked out of that hearing today, when you made your dramatic stand, you were thinking about Tommy O'Brien, about Doc Martinez, about men who have been dead for 80 years. But I am alive, Dad. I am your son. And you are destroying my future to defend the past. Brennan opens his eyes, stares at the red envelope. What do you want me to do, Michael? Tomorrow, when you go back, admit you might be wrong, show some humility, tell them you are just one man with one perspective. Give them something, anything, so I can distance myself from this. You want me to lie. I want you to be human. You are not a hero, Dad. You are just a man who survived a war. That does not make you right about everything. The line goes dead. Brennan sits in silence for a long time. Then he picks up the red envelope, turns it over in his hands, feels the weight of whatever is inside. He thinks about opening it, but not yet. Some truth can wait one more day. Act 2. Alpha, the Pershing question. Morning comes too quickly. The hearing room is even more crowded than yesterday. Word has spread. Brennan's testimony went viral. Video clips circulating on social media, headlines in newspapers. Tank commander defends Sherman. Congress challenges WWII history. Hero or cover-up? The Sherman debate. Brennan takes his seat at the witness table. He did not sleep well. His uniform feels heavier today. The chairman bangs his gavel. This hearing will come to order. Captain Brennan, you are reminded you are still under oath. Senator Blackwood, you may continue your questioning. Blackwood stands. He looks tired too. The media coverage has not been favorable to him. Social media is calling him names, grandstander, politician exploiting veterans. One hashtag is trending, Brennan tells truth. But Blackwood is not finished. Captain Brennan, yesterday you testified that the M26 Pershing was not deployed earlier because it was unreliable. You showed us documents about mechanical failures. But I want to focus on a different question. Even if the Pershing had problems, would not some Pershings have been better than none? Would not giving tank crews the option of a better gun and better armor have saved at least some lives? Brennan considers the question carefully. This is the reasonable ground, the place where Blackwood sounds sensible. Senator, war is not about better than nothing. War is about what works when everything goes wrong. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have a rifle that fires the biggest bullet but jams every 10th shot, or a rifle that fires a smaller bullet but never jams? That is a false choice, Captain. No, Senator. That is the choice we faced. The Pershing had a bigger gun, thicker armor, but it broke down. In war, a broken tank is a dead crew. The Germans learned this at Kursk. We learned it in Korea. Reliability matters more than capability. Blackwood picks up a folder. I have testimony here from a veteran who served in a Pershing in early 1945. He says the Pershing was superior to the Sherman in every way. I do not doubt that, Senator. By early 45, the Pershing's problems had been mostly solved. But that is my point. It took until 45. If we had rushed it into production in 43 or 44, it would have been a disaster. How can you be sure? Because I read the test reports, Senator. Because I talked to the engineers who designed it. Because I understand that complicated machines need time to become reliable. Brennan leans forward. Senator, do you know why the Germans lost at Kursk even though they had better tanks? Because half their Panthers broke down. The Russians did not have to destroy them. The Panthers destroyed themselves. That is what happens when you rush technology into war. A congressman from California raises his hand. The chairman recognizes him. Captain Brennan, I want to ask about decision-making. Who decided not to deploy the Pershing earlier? Was it General McNair? And there it is, the name everyone has been waiting for. Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, head of Army Ground Forces. The man everyone loves to blame. General McNair was involved in many decisions, sir, but he did not make decisions in a vacuum. But he was opposed to heavy tanks, correct? He believed armor should be mobile, yes, sir? And that belief cost American lives. Brennan's jaw tightens. No, sir, that belief won the war. The room goes silent. Explain that, Captain, the California congressman says. General McNair understood something that a lot of people forget. The goal was not to build the perfect tank. The goal was to build enough tanks to win the war. The Sherman was reliable. It was easy to produce. It was easy to maintain. It was easy to ship across oceans. We built 49,000 of them. Germany built 6,000 Panthers and 1,800 Tigers combined. We won with numbers and logistics. That was McNair's strategy, and it worked. But individual crews paid the price for that strategy. Individual crews pay the price in every war, sir. That is the nature of combat. But more crews came home alive because of the Sherman than would have come home in Pershings that broke down in front of enemy guns. Blackwood interjects. Captain, you keep defending McNair, but is it not true that McNair was an artilleryman? That he did not believe tanks should fight other tanks? That his doctrine created the tank destroyer force specifically to keep tanks from engaging in tank versus tank combat? Senator, that is 3 questions. Which would you like me to answer first? Scattered laughter in the gallery. Answer them all, Captain? Fine, yes. General McNair was an artilleryman. So was General Devers, who commanded armored force. Branch has nothing to do with competence. Second, McNair believed tanks were most effective when used for exploitation and breakthrough, not static defense. That is different from saying tanks should not fight other tanks. Third, the tank destroyer concept was about creating a specialized force for anti-armor work. But that did not mean tanks were forbidden from fighting tanks. Brennan pulls out another document. This is Field Manual 1733 from 1942. Tank Doctrine, written by Armored Force, approved by McNair. I will read a section. Tank versus tank action. Attacking tanks frequently encounter hostile tank units unexpectedly. At other times, it may be required to attack hostile tanks deliberately. End quote. He sets the document down. That is official doctrine, Senator. Tanks were always expected to fight tanks. The idea that McNair forbade it is a myth. Then why create tank destroyers at all? Because specialization works. You have infantry, you have armor, you have artillery. Each has a role. Tank destroyers were optimized for ambush and defense. Tanks were optimized for assault and exploitation. But if a tank met an enemy tank, of course it fought. That was the job. Another congressman, this one from Texas, speaks up. Captain, I served in Iraq. I understand combined arms. But what I do not understand is why American tankers in World War II had to rely on tactics and training to overcome equipment deficiencies. Should not our men have had the best equipment? Period. Brennan looks at the congressman, sees the uniform pin on his lapel, Iraq campaign medal. Sir, with respect, did you always have the best equipment in Iraq? The congressman pauses. We had good equipment, but not perfect equipment, correct? You made do with what you had. You trained hard. You used tactics. You adapted. That is what soldiers do. We did the same thing in World War II. The Sherman was good equipment. Not perfect, but good enough. And we made it work. But men died, Captain. Yes, sir. Men died. 1,574 tank crewmen killed in action in the European theater. That is a tragedy. But do you know how many infantrymen died? 140,000. Do you know why more infantrymen died? Because infantry is more dangerous than armor. The Sherman protected its crews better than any other tank in the war. That is a bold claim, Captain. Then let me back it up. Act 2, Bravo, the gun that never was. Brennan opens his folder again. He has been preparing for this moment for 5 days. Senator Blackwood has spent a lot of time talking about the Pershing, but there is another tank he has not mentioned. The British Sherman Firefly, equipped with the 17-pounder gun, capable of destroying any German tank at range. Why did America not adopt the Firefly? That is the question everyone wants answered. Blackwood leans forward. Yes, Captain. Why did we not adopt it? Because we tested it, and it failed. Brennan produces a photograph, passes it to the committee. This is a gunnery test from September 1944, Aberdeen Proving Ground. Target, 6 foot by 6 foot panel at 1,000 yards. Standard engagement range. He produces another document. Test results. Sherman Firefly with 17-pounder gun. 18 rounds fired. Hits, 0. The committee erupts in conversation. 0 hits? Blackwood demands. That is impossible. No, Senator, that is accuracy, or lack thereof. The test was abandoned because the gun could not hit the target consistently. Why not? Because the 17-pounder was too big for the Sherman turret. The gunner had to contort himself into an uncomfortable position. The breech recoiled into his face with every shot. The optics were misaligned. It was a terrible gun platform. Brennan produces another photograph. This one shows the interior of a Firefly turret. This is what the gunner dealt with. 8 inches less space than a standard 76mm Sherman. 40% slower turret traverse. Poor visibility. The British Armored Board tested the Firefly after the war against the American 76mm Sherman and the M26 Pershing. Their conclusion, Firefly is the least desirable configuration tested. But the 17-pounder could penetrate more armor, Blackwood argues. Penetration on paper does not matter if you cannot hit the target, Senator. We compared the 17-pounder to the American 76mm high-velocity armor, piercing round. Same test. 1,000 yards. The 76mm hit 18 out of 18 shots. Average penetration, 160 millimeters. The 17-pounder could theoretically penetrate 190 millimeters. But if you cannot hit, theoretical penetration is irrelevant. Brennan pauses, looks at the committee. And here is what nobody talks about. British tank crews died at twice the rate of American tank crews. 0.56 killed per tank versus our 0.28. Why? Because the British wore berets into combat instead of helmets. 40% of British tank casualties were head wounds. The Firefly did not save British lives. It looked impressive on paper and killed men in practice. The gallery is silent now. The weight of numbers. The reality of death. A congresswoman from New York speaks. Captain Brennan, are you saying the British made mistakes? I am saying everyone made mistakes, ma'am. War is a series of mistakes that you try to correct before the enemy exploits them. The British made different choices than we did. Some worked, some did not. But the idea that the Firefly was superior to American Shermans is not supported by evidence. What about crew testimony? I have read accounts from British veterans who loved the Firefly. And I have read accounts from American veterans who loved the 75mm Sherman, ma'am. Personal preference is not the same as tactical effectiveness. Data matters. And the data says American tank crews had higher survival rates, better accuracy, and more tactical flexibility than any other army in the war. Blackwood stands again. His frustration is visible now. Captain Brennan, you seem to have an answer for everything. You defend every decision. You justify every choice. But at the end of the day, men died. 1,574 men. Do you not think we owed them better? And there it is. The question Brennan has been avoiding. He takes a breath. Senator, I think we owed them the truth. And the truth is complicated. Explain. Brennan stands, walks to the front of his table, closer to the committee, closer to the cameras. The 76 millimeter gun. Everyone talks about how we should have had it earlier, how it could penetrate Panthers, how it would have saved lives. Want to know why we did not have it at Normandy? Silence. Because we did not want it. The room explodes. Reporters shouting, committee members leaning forward. Blackwood on his feet. What did you just say? Blackwood demands. In May 1944, there were 442 76 millimeter Shermans in England. Ready to go, ready to deploy to Normandy. Armored Force asked the tank battalion commanders if they wanted them. They said no. Why would they refuse better guns? Because the 75 millimeter was working. We were killing Panthers in Italy. We were killing Tigers. We did not see a need for new equipment that would require retraining, new ammunition supplies, new logistics. We thought the 75 was good enough. Brennan's voice drops. We were wrong. Act 2, Charlie, the confession. The hearing room is absolutely silent now. Everyone can sense something shifting. Captain Brennan, the chairman says quietly, are you saying you personally were involved in this decision? Brennan reaches into his jacket, pulls out a folded piece of paper, unfolds it carefully. This is a memorandum dated June 3rd, 1944, 3 days before D-Day. From Lieutenant James Brennan, tank platoon commander to armored board. He begins to read. Subject, tank gun allocation. Request permission to reject 76 millimeter Sherman allocation for 3rd Armored Division. Crew confidence high with 75 millimeter guns. Logistical changeover will delay D-Day readiness. Recommend postpone until after initial landing phase. He looks up. I wrote that memo. I was 22 years old. I was a platoon commander. And when Armored Board asked for input from the field, I recommended we stick with what we knew. The gallery erupts, cameras flashing, reporters typing frantically. Blackwood is on his feet. Captain Brennan, are you telling this committee that you rejected better equipment? I am telling this committee that I made a recommendation based on what I knew at the time. I had limited information, limited experience. I thought the 75 millimeter was adequate. I was wrong. So you admit it. You and others like you cost American lives by refusing better equipment. Brennan's eyes flash. No, Senator. I admit I made a decision that in hindsight was not optimal. But that does not mean the decision cost lives. How can you say that? Because by the time the 76 millimeter would have made a difference, we had it. By August 1944, most units had transitioned to 76 millimeter guns. The 75 millimeter served us well through the bulkage fighting in Normandy, where close-range combat favored its faster reload speed. By the time we faced Panthers in open terrain, we had the 76. But your driver, Private O'Brien, he died in a 75 millimeter Sherman. The room goes quiet again. Brennan's hands grip the table edge. Yes, he did. Would he have survived in a 76 millimeter Sherman? I do not know, Senator. Would he have had a better chance? I do not know. Blackwood presses forward. But if you had accepted the 76 millimeter guns in June, he might have had a better chance. Yes or no? Brennan closes his eyes. Behind his eyelids, he sees Tommy O'Brien. Red hair, freckles, 20 years old, trapped in a burning tank. Screaming. Yes, Brennan whispers. He might have had a better chance. The words hang in the air like smoke. Blackwood looks at the cameras, looks at the committee. He has won. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. The chairman looks at Brennan. Captain, do you need a recess? Brennan opens his eyes. No, sir, I need to finish. Finish what, Captain? The truth? He stands, walks around the table, stands directly in front of the committee, in front of the cameras, in front of everyone. Tommy O'Brien died on August 12, 1944. Our Sherman took 2 hits from a Tiger II, 88 millimeter gun. The first hit penetrated the lower hull. Transmission housing collapsed. Tommy's leg was pinned. The second hit struck the turret, started a fire. I ordered the crew to bail out. My gunner, Doc Martinez, refused. He tried to free Tommy. I physically dragged Doc out of the tank. 10 seconds later, the ammunition cooked off. Tommy died. Doc and I lived. His voice is steady now, clear. For 79 years, Doc blamed himself for leaving Tommy behind. For 79 years, I blamed myself for giving the order to abandon him. 2 weeks ago, Doc died still believing we failed Tommy because we had inadequate equipment. Brennan looks directly at Blackwood. But that is not true, Senator. Tommy did not die because we had a 75-millimeter gun instead of a 76. He died because an 88-millimeter gun hit us twice. No gun we could have had would have changed that. No armor we could have carried would have stopped it. Tommy died because war is hell, and sometimes the enemy gets lucky and good men die. He turns to face the gallery, the veterans, the cameras, America. If this committee wants to say that 1,574 American tank crewmen died due to criminal negligence, then you are calling every one of them a victim instead of a warrior. You are saying they died because their country failed them instead of because they fought an enemy that was trying to kill them. And that is a lie. His voice rises. Those men were not victims. They were soldiers. They climbed into tanks knowing the risks. They fought with the equipment they had. They trained hard. They adapted. They won. And if we dishonor their sacrifice by claiming they died because of bureaucratic failure instead of enemy action, then we dishonor every man who ever put on a uniform. The gallery is on its feet now, veterans saluting, some crying. One old man in a wheelchair, 90 years old if he is a day, tries to stand. Cannot. Salutes from his chair. Brennan's voice breaks. I made a decision in June of 1944 that might have been wrong. I will carry that for the rest of my life. But I will not let anyone say that Tommy O'Brien died because his country failed him. He died because he was a soldier, and soldiers die. Freedom demands that price. Victory carries that cost. And I will be damned if I let politicians 79 years later turn his sacrifice into a scandal. He is crying now, openly, in front of Congress, in front of the cameras, in front of the world. You want someone to blame Senator? Blame me. I wrote the memo. I refused the guns. I gave the order to abandon Tommy. That is on me. But do not you dare blame the men who designed the Sherman. Do not blame the generals who deployed it. Do not blame the country that built it. The Sherman was exactly what it needed to be. Reliable, producible, good enough. And good enough won the war. He walks back to his table, sits down, puts his head in his hands. The chairman does not pound his gavel. The room does not need order. The room needs silence. After a long moment, Blackwood speaks. His voice is different now, quieter. Captain Brennan, my grandfather died in a Sherman, December 22nd, 1944, Bastonia. Brennan looks up. His name was Samuel. He was 23. I never met him. My father grew up without him. For 50 years, I believed he died because his country gave him inadequate equipment. You have spent 2 days telling me I am wrong, and I do not know what to believe anymore. Blackwood sits down, looks at his notes, then pushes them away. Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn for the day. I need time to review the evidence. So moved. This hearing is adjourned until tomorrow morning at 900 hours. The gavel falls. Brennan sits alone at the table as the room empties. Reporters rush out to file stories. Committee members exit through back doors. Veterans line up to shake his hand. But Brennan does not move. He sits, stares at his hands, and wonders if he has just destroyed everything he tried to protect. Act 2 Delta, the night vigil. 10 p.m., Brennan's hotel room. His phone has been ringing for 6 hours. He stopped answering after the first dozen calls. His son, his lawyer, reporters, veterans groups. Everyone wants a statement. Everyone wants to know what happens next. But Brennan does not know. He sits on the edge of the bed, the red envelope beside him. On the television, muted, cable news shows his testimony on repeat. The moment he admitted writing the memo, the moment he broke down, the moment he walked out. Already the takes are forming, hero or fool, honest or reckless, defender of history or man in denial. A knock at the door. Brennan considers ignoring it, but old habits die hard. He opens the door. His son stands in the hallway. Michael looks terrible, suit rumpled, tie loose, eyes red. Dad, can I come in? Brennan steps aside. Michael enters, looks around the room, sees the television, sees his father's uniform hung carefully on a hanger, sees the red envelope. I drove here, Michael says, 3 hours from Austin. I should have been knocking on doors, meeting voters, trying to save my campaign, but I came here instead. Why? Because I watched your testimony, all of it, and I realized something. What is that? Michael sits on the bed, picks up the red envelope, turns it over. What is this? Something I have been carrying for 30 years. Something I should have opened a long time ago. Are you going to open it now? I do not know. Michael sets the envelope down, looks at his father. Dad, when you stood up there today and admitted you rejected the 76mm guns, when you said Tommy might have had a better chance if you had made a different decision, do you know what I thought? That I destroyed your campaign. No, I thought that is the bravest thing I have ever seen. Brennan looks at his son, really looks at him, sees tears in Michael's eyes. My whole campaign has been about honesty, about transparency, about doing the right thing even when it is hard. And here you are, 79 years after the fact, admitting a mistake in front of Congress and cameras and the whole world. Not because you had to, but because it was true. That is the kind of integrity I have been claiming to have. And you showed me what it actually looks like. Michael, no, let me finish. I came here to tell you that you were right. I should not have made that video. I should not have called the Sherman a death trap. I did not know what I was talking about. I read some books. I looked at some statistics. I never asked you. I never asked veterans. I just assumed I knew better. And I was wrong. Michael stands. I am going to lose this election, Dad. And that is okay, because I learned something more important than winning. I learned that truth matters more than polls. And I learned that from you. Father and son stand facing each other. Then Brennan pulls his son into a hug. They stand like that for a long time. When they finally separate, Michael picks up the red envelope again. What is really in here, Dad? Brennan takes it from him, feels the weight. The answer to the question I have been afraid to ask for 79 years. What question? Whether I made the right choice when I ordered Doc to abandon Tommy. Michael goes still. There is something in there that would tell you that. Maybe, I do not know. I sealed it 30 years ago and I have never opened it. Why not? Because I was afraid of what it would say. And now? Brennan looks at the envelope, at his son, at the muted television showing his testimony on repeat. Now I think it is time to stop being afraid. He takes a breath, opens the envelope. Inside is a single piece of paper. Yellowed, typed on an old manual typewriter. Official letterhead, Department of the Army, Office of the Adjutant General. It is dated November 3rd, 1945, 6 months after the war ended. Brennan begins to read, his hands shake. Michael watches his father's face, sees emotions flicker across it like shadows. Shock, pain, something else. Relief? What does it say, Dad? Brennan looks up, his eyes are wet. It says Tommy lived for 3 minutes after I pulled Doc out. It says medics reached the tank. It says they tried to get him out, but the fire was too intense. It says Tommy told the medic to tell me it was not my fault. It says his last words were, "The captain made the right call." The paper falls from Brennan's hands. I never knew, he whispers. For 79 years, I thought he died instantly. I thought he burned alive. I never knew he spoke. I never knew he said that. Michael picks up the paper, reads it himself, sees the signature at the bottom. Captain Howard Miller, Medical Corps. Why did you seal this away? Michael asks. Because the medic wrote one more thing at the bottom, a note, not official, just personal. Michael reads the handwritten addendum at the bottom of the page. Captain Brennan, I was the medic who tried to reach Private O'Brien. I could not save him, but I want you to know he was not afraid. He was calm. He said you taught him that. He said you taught all of them that. He said if he had to die, he was glad it was with a crew that made him feel like he mattered. That is the greatest gift you can give a soldier. Thank you for giving it to him. Michael sets the paper down. Dad, this does not prove you were wrong. This proves you were right. Brennan shakes his head. No, Michael, this proves Tommy was right. About me, about the crew, about what mattered. He picks up the paper, folds it carefully, puts it back in the envelope. Tomorrow I go back to Congress. Tomorrow I finish this. Not for me, not for Doc, for Tommy. Because he deserves to have someone tell the truth about what kind of men climbed into those Shermans and what kind of tanks brought most of them home. Michael nods. What did you need from me? Nothing, just be my son. That is enough. I can do that. Michael leaves. The door closes. Brennan sits alone with the red envelope. And for the first time in 79 years, he sleeps without nightmares. Dawn breaks over Washington, D.C. like a promise. Brennan stands at the Lincoln Memorial, alone except for the ghosts. He arrived at 5 a.m., unable to sleep despite the peace he found last night. The statue of Lincoln looms above him, 16 feet of marble, carved to remember a man who sent thousands to die so that millions could live free. Leadership requires sacrifice. Sometimes the sacrifice is your own life. Sometimes it is the lives of others. Either way, the weight never leaves. Behind the statue carved into the wall are Lincoln's words, the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, we are met on a great battlefield. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives. Brennan reads the words again, as he has read them 100 times before. But today they mean something different. It is not the dead who need redemption. It is the living. His phone buzzes, a text message from Michael. Good luck today, Dad. Make Tommy proud. Another message from his lawyer. Media is calling you a hero. Blackwood's office leaked that he might withdraw the investigation. Come prepared for victory. But Brennan does not want victory. He wants truth. And truth is never as simple as winning or losing. He walks back to his hotel, showers, puts on his uniform for the last time this week. Every ribbon in place, every medal aligned. The armor of a man who has fought this battle before and knows he will fight it again. The hearing room is packed beyond capacity. Fire marshals stand by the doors, cameras from every major network. The gallery is full of veterans, some who traveled overnight to be here. The youngest is 68, a Vietnam tanker. The oldest is 94, a Sherman crewman from 1st Armored Division. They have come to see this finished. Brennan takes his seat, looks at the committee, sees Senator Blackwood, who looks like a man who did not sleep at all, sees the chairman, who nods with something that might be respect. The gavel falls. This hearing will come to order. Captain Brennan, you are still under oath. Senator Blackwood, you may proceed. But Blackwood does not stand immediately. He shuffles papers, looks at notes, then sets everything aside. Captain Brennan, I have spent the last 18 hours reviewing the testimony, reading the documents you provided, speaking with military historians. And I need to ask you one question before we continue. Yes, Senator? Do you believe the Sherman was a good tank? The question hangs in the air. Simple. Direct. Impossible to answer simply. Senator, I believe the Sherman was the right tank for the war we fought. That is not the same as saying it was perfect. But perfect was not available. Right was, and right was enough. Even though men died. Men die in every war, Senator. The question is not whether men died. The question is whether more men would have lived with different equipment. And the evidence says no. Then let me test that evidence, Captain. Act 3, Alpha, the armor question. Blackwood stands now. He has regained his composure. This is his last chance. Captain Brennan, you testified that the Sherman had adequate armor, but German tanks had thicker armor. Tigers had over 4 inches of frontal armor. Panthers had 3 inches. The Sherman had 2 inches. Basic math says the Sherman was inferior. Basic math is wrong, Senator. Brennan pulls out 2 large photographs. Technical diagrams. He passes them to the nearest congressman. This is the frontal armor profile of a Sherman M4A3. 2 inches of armor at 56 degrees from vertical. This is a Tiger one. 4 inches of armor at 8 degrees from vertical. Question for the committee. Which one is harder to penetrate? A congressman from Michigan, former engineer, speaks up. The angle matters. At 56 degrees, the effective thickness is much greater than the actual thickness. Correct, sir. The Sherman's 2 inches at 56 degrees equals 3.6 inches of effective armor. The Tiger's 4 inches at 8 degrees equals 4.04 inches. The difference is less than half an inch. Blackwood frowns, but the Tiger still had more. 0.4 inches more, Senator. That is barely significant, and the Sherman had advantages the Tiger did not. Lower profile, faster traverse, better reliability, easier to hide, easier to maneuver. Armor is not just thickness, it is the whole package. Another photograph. This is a Panther, 3.1 inches frontal armor at 55 degrees. Effective thickness, 4.4 inches. Better than the Sherman, but not overwhelmingly so, and the Panther had a critical flaw. What flaw? Side armor, 40 millimeters, less than 2 inches. The Sherman's side armor was also thin, but our doctrine was built around not exposing our sides. German doctrine relied on frontal assault. Once we learned to flank Panthers, That 4.4 inches of frontal armor was irrelevant. Brennan pulls out a combat report. Aircourt, September 1944. Of 86 Panthers destroyed by 4th Armored Division, 73 were hit in the side or rear. Only 13 were frontal penetrations. We did not need thicker frontal armor. We needed better tactics, and we had them. The Michigan congressman interjects, "Captain, you are describing a tactical solution to a technical problem. But would not a technical solution have been better? Not if the technical solution compromised other factors, sir. Thicker armor means heavier weight. Heavier weight means slower speed, higher fuel consumption, more wear on the engine and transmission, and bridges that cannot support you. The Sherman weighed 33 tons. The Pershing weighed 46 tons. When 3rd Armored Division crossed the Rhine at Remagen, every Sherman made it across. Every Pershing had to wait for engineers to reinforce the bridge. Speed matters. Mobility matters. Deployability matters." He looks at the committee. The Sherman was not designed to win tank versus tank duels in open terrain. It was designed to be shipped across oceans, driven across countries, supplied in the field, repaired by mechanics with basic tools, and operated by crews with 6 months of training. It did all of that better than any tank in the world. That was not a compromise. That was a choice, and it was the right choice. Blackwood shifts. "You keep talking about choices, Captain, but someone made the choice to prioritize production over protection. Someone decided crew lives were less important than logistics. That is the criminal negligence this committee is investigating." And there it is, the final accusation. Brennan stands. "No, Senator, that is the accusation this committee started with, but it is not supported by evidence. Let me show you why." Act 3, Bravo, the death trap lie. Brennan walks to the front of the room. He has prepared for this moment. Everything leads here. The Sherman has been called a death trap, a Ronson, a Tommy Cooker, a coffin on tracks. These names suggest that the Sherman burned more easily than other tanks, that crews were more likely to die. Let me show you the reality. He projects a chart onto the screen. Percentage of tanks found burned on the battlefield after combat. Sherman, 60 to 80% depending on unit. Sounds terrible until you see the rest of the data. Another column appears. Panzer IV, 82%, Panther, 78%, Tiger, 74%, T-34, 71%. The room goes silent. Every tank burns, Senator, every single one. Want to know why? Because when you disable an enemy tank, you keep shooting until it catches fire. You do not let the enemy recover and repair it. Burned tanks are not evidence of poor design. They are evidence of thorough destruction. A congresswoman from Oregon asks, "But Captain, the Sherman had gasoline engines. German tanks had diesel. Diesel is harder to ignite." "Ma'am, German tanks did not have diesel engines. They had gasoline engines. Same as us. The T-34 had a diesel engine, and it burned at the same rate. The cause of tank fires is not the fuel, it is the ammunition. High explosive rounds cook off when heated. That is why tanks burn, and every tank carried ammunition." Brennan projects another document. In 1944, the Ordnance Department introduced wet stowage, ammunition stored in water-jacketed bins. Fire rate dropped from 60 to 80% down to 10 to 15%. Problem solved. Not by changing fuel, not by adding armor, by smart engineering that protected the ammunition. He turns back to the committee. But the real question is not how many tanks burned. The real question is how many crews survived, and that is where the Sherman excelled. A new chart. Average crew casualties per tank loss. Sherman, 0.28 killed in action per tank. British tanks, including Shermans and Cromwell shells, 0.56 killed per tank. Polish 4th Armored Brigade using T-34s, 1.8 killed per tank. The numbers are stark, undeniable. American tank crews in Shermans died at 1/3 the rate of British tank crews and 1/6 the rate of Soviet tank crews. Why? Because the Sherman had something no other tank had, a spring-loaded overhead hatch. Brennan picks up a remote, plays a video. On screen, Aberdeen Proving Ground. Yesterday, Brennan climbing into different tanks. "I am 68 years old. I have not been in a tank in 30 years. Watch how long it takes me to evacuate each tank." The video shows him in a T-34, struggling with the driver's hatch, unscrewing, kicking, 2 minutes 18 seconds. Tiger 1, scooting sideways through a side hatch, 1 minute 52 seconds. British Cromwell, squeezing in straight, scooting right, 1 minute 46 seconds. Sherman M4A3. Overhead hatch pops open with a spring, 14 seconds. The committee stares in silence. When Betty was hit on August 12, 1944, 3 of my crew were out in under 20 seconds. Doc Martinez, Tex Williams, Frank Kowalski, all alive. Tommy O'Brien died because the transmission housing fell on his leg. Not because of the hatch, not because of the design, because of bad luck. His voice hardens. You want to call the Sherman a death trap, Senator? Then explain why 97% of Sherman crewmen survived the war. Explain why our casualty rate was 6 times lower than infantry. Explain why more American tankers came home than any other army in the world. The gallery erupts in applause, veterans on their feet, shouting, cheering. The chairman pounds his gavel but does not demand silence immediately. He lets it continue for 10 seconds, 15, 20. Finally, order. We will have order. The room quiets. Blackwood remains seated. He looks defeated, but not angry. Something else. Thoughtful. Captain Brennan, one final question. You have defended the Sherman. You have defended the decisions made by commanders. You have defended the doctrine. But you admitted yesterday that you yourself made a decision that might have cost lives. How do you reconcile that? Brennan looks at Blackwood, sees not an enemy now, sees a grandson still grieving. Senator, I reconcile it by accepting that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. I was 22 years old. I had limited information. I made a call. It might have been wrong, but it was not negligent. It was not criminal. It was what every commander does in every war. You make decisions with incomplete information and you live with the consequences. Even when the consequences are men dying, especially when the consequences are men dying, that is command, that is leadership, that is war. And if we start investigating every decision made in combat with the benefit of hindsight, then we dishonor every commander who ever had to make impossible choices. Blackwood nods slowly. Captain, my grandfather died in a Sherman. For 50 years, I believe someone was responsible for that. Someone who could have prevented it. You are telling me I am wrong. No, Senator. I am telling you your grandfather was responsible for it. He chose to serve. He chose to fight. He knew the risks. And he did it anyway because that is what soldiers do. The enemy killed him. Not his equipment, not his commanders, the enemy. And there is honor in that. Blackwood stands, looks at his notes one more time, then looks at the committee. Mr. Chairman, I move that this investigation be closed. The evidence does not support a finding of criminal negligence or equipment inadequacy. The Sherman tank was adequate for the mission assigned. American tank crews performed with distinction. No further action is warranted. The room explodes. Reporters rushing for doors. Veterans cheering, cameras flashing. The chairman bangs his gavel. Order. Senator Blackwood, are you withdrawing your allegations? I am admitting I was wrong, Mr. Chairman. This investigation was based on assumptions that are not supported by evidence. I allowed personal grief to cloud my judgment. Captain Brennan has shown us that the truth is more complicated than I wanted to believe. And I think it is time we accept that truth. Act 3, Charlie, the final testimony. But Brennan is not done. Mr. Chairman, may I make a final statement? Captain, the investigation is being withdrawn. You are under no obligation. I know, sir, but there is one more thing that needs to be said. The chairman nods. Proceed, Captain. Brennan takes a breath. This hearing began with a question. Were American tank crews given adequate equipment in World War II? I have spent 3 days answering that question with documents and data and technical specifications. But I have not answered the real question. The question that every veteran in this room wants answered. The question that every family member of a fallen tanker wants answered. He looks at the gallery, at the old men in wheelchairs, at the sons and daughters and grandchildren of the dead. The real question is, did they die for nothing? Silence. Doc Martinez asked me that question before he died. He wanted to know if Tommy O'Brien died because someone failed him, if the Sherman was a death trap, if decisions made in Washington cost lives that could have been saved. And I told him I would find out. I promised him. Brennan's voice cracks. I opened a letter last night, a letter I sealed away 30 years ago because I was afraid of what it said. It was from the medic who tried to save Tommy, and it said that Tommy's last words were, "The captain made the right call." He wipes his eyes. For 79 years, I thought I failed Tommy. I thought I made the wrong choice when I ordered Doc to abandon him. I thought maybe if I had stayed, if I had tried harder, if I had done something different, Tommy would have lived. But Tommy knew. Even as he was dying, Tommy knew. The right call was not to save him. The right call was to save the crew that could be saved. The room is absolutely silent. Even the cameras have stopped moving. That is what the Sherman was. The right call, not the perfect call, not the call that saved everyone, but the call that saved the most people possible. We built 49,000 Shermans. We sent them to North Africa, Italy, France, Germany, the Pacific. We shipped them across oceans. We maintained them in jungles, in deserts, and frozen forests. We put 18-year-old kids inside them with 6 months of training and expected them to fight the best army in the world. And they did, and they won. He looks directly at Blackwood. Your grandfather, Samuel, died at Bastogne. He died in a Sherman, but he did not die because the Sherman failed him. He died because he was surrounded by the German army in the middle of winter, and he fought anyway. He died doing what soldiers do, standing between evil and home. And the Sherman was good enough to get him there and keep him in the fight long enough to make a difference. Every weapon can only do so much. Every soldier understands that. Brennan's voice drops to almost a whisper. 1,574 American tank crewmen died in the European theater. Every one of them was somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's husband, somebody's father. They died in Shermans. But they did not die because of Shermans. They died because they were soldiers in a war. And if we turn their sacrifice into a scandal, if we turn their service into negligence, then we take away the one thing they still have, their honor. He turns to face the committee one last time. So yes, the Sherman was adequate. It was more than adequate. It was exactly what it needed to be. Reliable, producible, survivable, good enough. And in war, good enough wins battles. Not perfect, not superior, good enough. This is the lesson we learned in blood. This is the truth we owe to the men who climbed into those steel boxes and came home alive, and the men who did not. Brennan sits down. The gallery is on its feet. Every veteran, every family member, every reporter, every congressional staffer, standing, saluting, crying. The chairman does not pound his gavel. He stands too, salutes. The committee votes, 15-0. The investigation is closed with a finding that no evidence of negligence or inadequacy was found. A commendation is issued to Captain James Brennan for service to historical truth. Senator Blackwood crosses the room, extends his hand. Captain, I am sorry for all of this, for questioning your service, for questioning the men who died. Brennan shakes his hand. Your grandfather was a hero senator. Never forget that. I won not, and I will make sure history does not forget the Sherman either. Not as a death trap, but as the tank that brought more men home than any other. The hearing ends. Epilogue, the homecoming. 6 months later, Fort Cavazos, Texas, formerly Fort Hood, renamed to honor a hero, a new memorial stands at the entrance. The Sherman tank M4A3, serial number 30479, known to her crew as Betty. She was found in a French farmer's field 5 years ago. Recovered, restored, shipped to America, and now she stands on a concrete pad surrounded by plaques that tell her story. On the hull, painted in white letters, 5 names: Tank Commander, Lieutenant James Brennan; Gunner, Corporal Robert Martinez; Driver, Private Tommy O'Brien, KIA, 12 August 1944; Loader, Private Jackson Williams Bow; Gunner, Private Frank Kowalski. The dedication ceremony draws 2,000 people. Veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, active duty soldiers from the 1st Cavalry Division, families, children, grandchildren. Among the crowd stands a man in his 80s holding a Purple Heart in a display case. The nameplate reads, Private Frank Kowalski, 3rd Armored Division. His grandson traveled from Chicago to be here. In his pocket, a letter his grandfather wrote in 1998, unsealed only after his death. If they ever find Betty, tell them we were brothers. From Arizona, too frail to travel, Tex Williams sent a telegram. It hangs on a stand beside the tank. The words are simple. We were a crew, we are brothers, forever, your loader, Tex. Michael Brennan speaks first. He lost his election, but gained something more important: perspective. My father taught me that truth is more important than winning, that honor matters more than politics, that the men who fought deserve better than our convenient narratives. This tank represents something more than metal and machinery. It represents a promise. We will not forget. We will not dishonor. We will tell the truth. Then Brennan speaks. He is 70 now. The years are showing, but his voice is still strong. In 1944, I climbed into this tank with 4 other men. We were kids, scared, unsure, but we had each other. And we had Betty. She carried us through Normandy, through France, through Germany. She took 14 hits. She kept fighting, and she brought 4 of us home. He places his hand on the tank. The metal is warm from the Texas sun. Tommy O'Brien died in this tank, but he did not die because Betty failed him. He died because war is cruel and random, and sometimes good men die despite everything we do to save them. Doc Martinez lived another 79 years, every day carrying the weight of survival. Tex Williams became a teacher. Frank Kowalski opened a grocery store in Chicago. I became a soldier and then a teacher of soldiers. We lived the lives Tommy could not live, and we never forgot him. Brennan opens a wooden box. Inside, folded carefully, is an American flag. The flag from Tommy O'Brien's funeral in 1944. The flag his widow kept for 70 years before giving it to Brennan with instructions: when you find Betty, bring him home. Brennan climbs onto the tank, opens the driver's hatch, places the flag inside, on the seat where Tommy sat, where Tommy died, where Tommy now rests forever. He closes the hatch, salutes. The crowd is silent. 2,000 people watching an old man say goodbye to a friend who has been dead for 80 years. Then from the back of the crowd, a voice, singing the old army song. I've got sixpence, jolly, jolly sixpence. I've got sixpence to last me all my life. Another voice joins, then another, veterans who remember, who were there, who understand. I've got tuppence to spend and tuppence to lend and tuppence to send home to my wife. The song spreads, 2,000 voices, singing for the men who came home and the men who did not. Brennan stands on the tank, eyes closed, listening, remembering. And for the first time in 80 years, he feels like maybe he did the right thing after all. Final scene, the classroom. 1 year later, Virginia Military Institute, Brennan's classroom. He is retiring. This is his last lecture. The room is packed with cadets in dress uniforms. On the wall behind him, a photograph. 5 young men standing in front of a Sherman tank, smiling. Gentlemen, Brennan begins, today I want to talk to you about leadership, about the decisions you will have to make when lives depend on you, about living with those decisions long after the battle ends. He points to the photograph. That is my crew. We fought together for 11 months. 1 of them died. 4 of us lived. For most of my life, I wondered if I made the right decisions, if I could have done something different, if I could have saved the one we lost. He pauses. And then I realized that was the wrong question. The right question is not whether you save everyone. The right question is whether you do everything possible to give your people the best chance, whether you train them, prepare them, equip them with what is available, not what is perfect, whether you make decisions based on the information you have, knowing that information will always be incomplete. A cadet raises his hand. Sir, how do you live with losing men under your command? Brennan looks at the young man, sees himself at 22, scared, uncertain, needing answers. You live with it by honoring them, by telling their story truthfully, by refusing to turn their sacrifice into a mistake or a scandal or someone's political advantage. Private Tommy O'Brien died fighting, not because I failed him, not because his equipment failed him, but because the enemy killed him. And there is honor in that. There is meaning in that. And as long as we remember that, he did not die for nothing. The cadet nods, understanding something he will not fully grasp until years later when he faces his own impossible choices. The lecture ends. Cadets file out. The room empties. Brennan stands alone, looks at the photograph one more time. We did good, Tommy, he whispers. We did real good. He turns off the lights, closes the door, walks down the hallway of a building dedicated to teaching young people how to lead, how to fight, how to win, and how to live with the cost of victory. The screen fades to black. Text appears. Captain James Brennan donated his Congressional Gold Medal to the National World War II Museum in honor of Corporal Robert Martinez and Private Tommy O'Brien. Michael Brennan won election to the Texas State Legislature in 2026. His first bill, the Martinez Act, protects posthumous military honors from political review. Sherman M4A3 Betty is on permanent display at Fort Cavazos, over 150,000 visitors per year. Of the 49 to 234 Shermans built, 1,784 survive today in museums and private collections around the world. Each one represents the 27.7 American tank crewmen who came home because of them. Dedicated to the 1,574 American tank crewmen killed in action 1941 to 1945, and the 47,942 who carried their memory home. Final image, the Sherman tank Betty at sunset, the American flag flying above her, 5 names painted on her hull, one of them marked with a gold star, all of them remembered, all of them honored, all of them home, and